So, in the one thing I think that when we talk about failures of the legislature, and ladies and gentlemen, I understand how challenging and how difficult it can be, but you can't ignore 40% of the budget and think we're going to solve the budget either with revenue increases or with reforming and reducing expenditures alone. It's called K-12 education. If you can't allow a non-traditionally licensed teacher into the classroom, how in the world are you going to deal with 40% challenging and taking on education reform? I think that's certainly where I would agree with Dane Smith, is that is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and the folks who show up next January are going to have to deal with that issue and deal with it directly. And when you talk about health care, the legislature's already reduced health care expenditures. You can't keep going back to reducing health care costs or health care reform, quote unquote, and think you're going to solve the budget situation without taking on K-12 education. I would just say, when you, in my review of who wins in the budget struggles, who wins in the tug of war, the 201 legislators or the governor, again, historically the governor. So my advice to everyone in the room, be careful who you vote for, because the challenges next January are going to be significant, and I think it's a very, very plain and simple choice, depending upon your ideology of how you want the state of Minnesota to proceed.
I think I heard Phil somewhere in there say he agreed with Dane on something. I think we've achieved something right there. They're on opposite ends of this table for a reason, you know.
We have a breakthrough.
You know, with all the doom and gloom we're hearing, that's interesting because it fits right in, because as I review the question you had from your last meeting, I have determined that only 7% of you in this room could be considered optimists, because there was a question, do you think the governor will veto budget bills passed by the DFL-controlled legislature? And this question was asked at a time when those budget bills included tax increases. And 93% said yes, he will veto bills that include new taxes, but 7%, the optimists in the group, said no, he and legislative leaders will compromise to find a budget solution. So bully for you for being optimistic. Obviously that did not happen. And Blois, we've only got about 7 minutes left, so I want each of you to keep your responses brief here. As we go into the next session, this year a lot of the blame for the inaction was on the fact that everybody's running for re-election or running for governor or president or Congress or whatever. They're not going to have that excuse next year. What is going to be their excuse? Because you know it's going to come right down to the wire again.
Well, I don't know what their excuse is going to be, because they'll figure it out as they get there. But I will look at Phil in the Taxpayers League and look at all of you in the audience and say, no matter who you vote for in the governor's race, I guarantee you this: they will raise your taxes. Period. They can't not raise your taxes. It's just a matter of which taxes they raise, whether it's your income tax or your sales tax. It doesn't mean they're going to increase the size of government either, because they can reduce the size of government. But one thing I think all legislators and all gubernatorial candidates agree on is that we have to get off the roller coaster of these deficits and surpluses and deficits and surpluses. And so I would make the statement right here that even Republican governor candidate Tom Emmer will raise the sales tax or expand the sales tax in some way if he's governor. And that's why he wouldn't sign Phil's pledge to get the GOP nomination.
Greg, do you believe what Blois is saying here? You think that's going to happen?
No. You know, I think back to this budget discussion we had, and I applaud Representative Winkler, because he said we're at a paradigm shift, folks. I mean, there is going to be massive, huge changes in state government. Not a lot different than what every business has had in the room, but yet for some reason state government, you know, it's a crisis, right? You folks deal with it every day. When state government deals with it, it's a crisis of immense proportions. Phil, remember this? Go back to 2002, when Governor Pawlenty slashed local government aid. He slashed it. There was going to be death and carnage. There's going to be no police, no fire, no nothing. Fergus Falls had to give up its fireworks that I was paying for. Detroit Lakes had to buy their own baseballs for the Little League team. And we've had cut after cut after cut after cut to local government aid. Has there been challenges at the local level? Of course there have. That doesn't mean that these things don't happen without putting people in tough spots and making tough decisions. That's what they're elected to do. That's what they're supposed to do. You know, and I had this discussion last year, a friendly discussion with Representative Carlson after this. Perfect opportunity to have zero-based budgeting, to take this whole thing apart next year. Don't do overviews. Start on January 1st or January 2nd and take the budget apart in every single committee all the way down to zero and work its way up. Does there have to be tax increases? I don't know. I mean, I'm not running for governor. I don't think there does. I think they do have to look at K-12 education. My gosh, you know, it's been a sacred cow. We've got declining enrollment in this state, folks. Shouldn't we look at K-12 education? Might there be an opportunity that we could actually spend less than that? I don't know if that's heresy, but I'll throw it out there.
Dane, jump in here. We got about 5 minutes left, by the way, 5-minute
Well,
warning.
I think that there will be some tax changes for sure. I agree with Blois that there probably will be a revenue positive tax overhaul that comes out of the next session. And even former state auditor Patricia Anderson, when she was running for governor, and she's very closely allied with Taxpayers League, of course, talked about raising some taxes as part of a revenue neutral overhaul. So yeah, I do think that there will be a revenue positive overall solution to the budget. I agree with Blois. I don't see that there's a way out. On the other hand, candidate Emmer claims that he can cut $20 billion out of the public sector, and we haven't seen a lot of detail on that. But I would not be quite as certain as Blois is that if he's elected governor, he would be able to continue disinvesting in public stuff.
Phil Krinke, do you think taxes will go up? And could it be that it won't necessarily be a tax increase? Of course, this is going to be mincing words, but could it be a broadening of the sales tax that some view as a tax increase, others just refer to it as broadening of the sales tax?
First of all, the March revenue forecast says that the state of Minnesota will, if on projection, increase revenues by $3 billion. So if you say that obviously the tax take at the state is going up, as employment returns, as as corporate income goes up, tax revenues will increase. Whether or not those projections are true to form, we obviously have to wait and see. The other thing is that in the last 2 years, state tax collections have already increased by over $1 billion on an annual basis. Remember, just a couple of years ago, the legislature overrode the governor's veto on a transportation bill. That's about $600 million of additional revenue to the state.
Business supported.
Every year. Thank you.
Led by Twin West.
I'll put the disclaimer in ahead of time, Dane. The citizens of the state voted for a sales tax increase. That's about another $250 million a year. And contrary to public opinion, Governor Pawlenty did sign business tax increases to the tune of about $140 million a year. So, folks, we're already paying more taxes, and tax collections will go up dramatically as predicted with economic recovery by an estimated $3 billion. So if you look at the fact, if the projections again are correct, that we're going to have about a $5 to $6 billion shortfall, that means with an additional $3 billion in revenue. So again, can this budget be balanced without raising additional taxes? Yes, because you have economic recovery. You don't have to continue to feed the beast at the rate we are currently feeding.
Final question. You each get 30 seconds in this, and then we have to get out of here, so these folks can go contribute to the economy yet today.